before we start, please give a very, very warm welcome to the great Agnès Varda. We, of course, going to focus today mostly on the exhibition here, what is exhibited. We're going to focus on Agnès' 21st century. Agnès did these amazing 2 lectures recently in the United States, one about her 20th century and one about her 21st century. And before we start, I wanted to also say that we prepared this leaflet here, because as we can't project images, we have this leaflet for you all, so I hope you all got one. And you have there all the works which one way or the other are going to be mentioned. And it's maybe a much more intimate way, actually, and somehow better than a PowerPoint presentation. Maybe to begin with the beginning, I wanted to begin with our collaboration, Agnès, which marks also the beginning of you arriving in the world of exhibitions. We met in the 90s for a first interview, but then the dialogue intensified very much in 2002-2003, when we prepared this project in Venice, where Rike Tiravanish and Maureen Nesbitt and I invited you to participate in this show called Utopia Station. And it was a project for the Venice Biennale, where we wanted to address this question of utopia, which actually Ernst Bloch once, when he was pushed against the wall by Adorno to finally define what is utopia, he said something is missing. So we wanted to kind of build a station for things which are missing, for concrete utopias also, and went to visit Agnès, somehow hoping that we could convince her to enter this project. And I wanted to ask you, Agnès, to tell us, maybe to start with what you did with this first installation about Batat Utopia.
You know, some of you have seen a documentary called The Gleaners and I, in which I have been following all the waste in the field with the potatoes, and I met, if I could say, heart-shaped potatoes. And then I took them home. I found them beautiful, started to cultivate them, to keep them, let them age, you know, being shrinkled, having new germ. And so I had been filming and photographing them for my own pleasure. And here comes that strange novel, that strange news that Hans wants me to join the very famous artists that were doing the Utopia Station. I was among the people out of the group that he asked Edouard Glissant, who was not used to do an exhibition. He asked me and somebody else also. I don't remember. So I was so excited because I'm ready. I was ready before even he called me. So, no, because, you know, it comes at the right moment sometimes in our lives. And so not only I love triptych, the shape of triptych, not only the Flemish 16th century, but I like the idea of 3 things together. So I decided to make a triptych in which the heart-shaped potatoes would be in the middle, breathing, with the sound of breathing, and on the side, panels, whatever had come out of them. It's difficult to explain. Les radicelles, you know, new little roots, germs, bizarre thing coming out of totally rotten potatoes. And on the floor, we had 700 kilos of real potatoes. Because it's interesting to bring to the representation, which is abstract, which is in the mind, to bring something true. I've done the same later with sound, you know. So I brought those potatoes. So that was my piece at the Utopia Station. And I was so afraid that nobody would come, because it was the first time I was showing something among famous artists. I said, how will people come? So I thought I should do my own advertising. So I did myself a potato costume. and I was just my feet and my hands away. And so I'm going around naming the potatoes. And so I thought people would say, what is it, what is it? And they would say, oh, there is an exhibition there. So I think by my costume, I brought at least 55 people.
And it was also amazing because already in '53, this pomme de terre cœur appears in a photograph of yours. It appears very early, the potato.
Yes, but I'd forgotten that one. When it came, and then it became a theme for me, because also it has a lot of meaning. You know, it's the most modest vegetable. And if you give the shape of heart, which has an understanding about affection, love. So it was like saying, we have to give our affection to what is modest, what is unknown, what is not taken seriously. So I like the theme and the shape of heart-shaped potatoes. This is it. You know it now. And you know, I'm very impressed. Some people love me, and some people love my work. And 10 years later, I still get in my mailbox heart-shaped potatoes. Some people drop one with a name or nothing. They know that I love them. So be ready to send me a potato.
That's great. And of course, soon after the Venice Biennale, the adventure with exhibitions continued with the Cartier Foundation, the Fondation Cartier. You've got a very long-standing relationship with the Cartier Foundation. For those of you who are going to be in Paris soon, you can always see a piece, actually 2 pieces now of Agnès in the garden. You can see one of the shacks, and you can also see actually a tree, but we're going to talk about that later. But it's actually very early on after Venice that you did this amazing piece of the widows of Noirmoutier, and that came to my mind when I entered here and I saw the big photograph, which is of course also connected to Noirmoutier. Can you tell us about this piece?
You know, how start the inspiration, how things come to the mind, I don't know, but most of the time, like little thread connected together suddenly. The way it happened that I was dealing with potatoes where he invited me. And then later, as you know, with Jacques Demy, that I lived with him and many years, we used to stay in the island of Noirmoutier, which is on the side of Nantes in the ocean. And we used to go there. And later, he passed away, and I still was going there. And I noticed more than usual that in the island and harbors where there are a lot of fishermen and sailors, there are more widows than elsewhere. The men die in the sea or accident in the boats. So I felt I could do something, speak with them. And I started to get connected with some of them and do little video that I would do myself, sometimes alone, sometimes with one help, and have them, they would trust me because I was a widow, because I was in the same island. So they opened their mind, they opened their heart, they said things, what they felt about loneliness. But that is the documentary part. But I had in mind a shape. It's always the structure and the shape that interests me. And that was a polyptych, which means a big screen in the middle. And that was shot with a 35mm camera, like real cinema, real print. And it shows a table on the beach. And then these women in black, they are around, moving a little, turning around the table. And that's the film. But it is surrounded by 14 video monitors, like this around. And each monitor corresponds to a chair. And the chair, you have to take an earphone and you listen to one of them. And you change the chair to listen to other one. It was connected at the seat in the front where the early one, etc. So I was very excited to do that because it was like conquérir.
To conquer?
The space, you know.
To conquer the space.
Yeah, because the screen, you are all together, you say the same screen, you may get the same emotion, but when you propose something else, you have 14 people alone listening to one widow and people waiting to get the chair. So it's a total different approach to communication between what is shown and what is perceived. And I was very interested to understand how putting together lonely people, putting together somebody who is just listening to a confidence, comment on dit confidence? Confidence.
Confidence?
Confidence. So I like that show very much. That was at la Fondation Cartier. And Hervé Chandez, who was running that, gave me so much energy by proposing me a lot of space in the place, downstairs and upstairs. So I made many other exhibitions, including, I had a little cat I loved a lot. And when he died in the garden, my son called me and said, he's dead in the garden, he put it in the earth. And when I came, I said, it's not enough, he deserves something better. So I started to make, on the real grave, a composition of shells and paper roses, and it was shot in animation, like the old time, you do everything, you take one shot, you take something on one shot. This is the basic animation thing, and then you show it in the other side, and then you have the thing building. And so roses and shells, I made a video, including a video crane and then even an helicopter, so that we could see the little cat was a little piece of the world. So that was shown at the Fondation Cartier. And later on, Hervé Chandès said we should have a shack in the garden so we could screen the cat. So now, in the garden of the Fondation, I made a little shack in wood, a very brutal shack. And inside, there is a video non-stop, the video of my cat. Zgugu was the name of the cat. So you have a shack of cat, and inside you have Zgugu's grave. And it's non-stop now. It's like what? It's like, comment on appelle les éoliennes? How do you do the electricity with it? No. The éolienne.
Turbine.
Turbine?
Yes. It's like the turbine. It gives me the feeling like life is on, time is on. And now the grave of Zgugu is giving also the same time. Death is on, grave is on, and we are still alive so far.
And it's beautiful. It's a permanent piece in the garden, and now it has been joined also by a tree, very recently.
No, it's something that I did in a film called Agnès From Here to There. I did 5 videos of traveling in the world, filming everything. Painters, salesmen, people in the street, people in the market, in museum. So I like to mix art and life. I don't believe that they are separated worlds. So when I film like this, I can go from a woman in the street selling something and then enter a museum. And then I had a long conversation with the peintre Soulage. But the next shot, I work with men inventing nets for the boats, So this is the way I've been doing my documentaries. But for the pieces in galleries and in exhibition, I try to find a shape, a structure that will allow me to do something different than cinema. I don't want to make a film like a cinema and show it in a gallery. I want to have a different approach to representation and exhibition by knowing that it will be seen by some people passing by, stopping or not stopping, which is the case here. I brought something very new. I was being invited. And the condition was, if you wish to come, you have to bring something new. I said, okay. So I started to think about something new. And I've got into a triptych again.
And before we talk about the triptych here, I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned cat and you mentioned the Fondation Cartier, it's a cabane. I think the English word is shack, a cabane. And you've come up with this display feature, with this format of the shack. And you told me the other day that it somehow had to do with Virginia Woolf and this idea of a room of one's own. Can you tell us about this idea of the shack? Because you've done many of them.
Well, children know that better than me. Children do shacks with sheets, books, under the table, in the garden, in the woods. We know that children, and even big children, like to have something that they build themselves to be in their private nest. And the idea of the nest and the idea of the shack came back to me because something related to cinema. So as you know now, the prints that we used to have, 35mm composite prints, being big reels that the projectionists in the booth had to organize. You have heard about that. You just look at the Colombo series. Many scenes of Colombo are in screening booth. Did you notice? Anyway, so they used to do this, and they were very heavy. And when came what they call now the DCP, digital package or whatever, you understand that it's much more easy to put like this. So the world is full of empty cans, but also full of prints, composite prints, big 7 or 8 for a film. And as in our company with my children, Mathieu and Rosalie, the company has acquired the rights of many our films and Jacques Demy, and we have plenty of reels of stock. And then I thought, 2 ideas came to me. One is you should recycle, because the recycling is part of the new world of thinking, you know. So how could I recycle those? And I will make a shack. It started like this. So make a shack means having a structure in metal and use the wall, the roof, everything with the composite print, the real film stock. So the first one I did was at la Fondation Cartier. And because, you know, the cinema is the light coming through images. So if you put a lot of light, it enters the shack. But the shack is like a house of cinema, a little house, a shack. And in the last show I did, I even used and recycled the cans, the metal cans, in which these reels were coming. And I did an arch just with the cans, like to welcome people, an arch, like in the old time.
So that's Le Bonheur, no? That's the...
And the shack is that shack is made with the print of Le Bonheur. Le Bonheur was called Happiness, came in 66 or 7. But it has been remembered also because the credit of that film was shot in a field of sunflowers. So I decided the shack would be a greenhouse, and we grew huge sunflowers inside. So the way is saying that from reality, a little imagination, plus the idea of a structure, plus nostalgia, plus recycling, the ideas build themselves. What I do, with a lot of help, because somebody has to help for the structure, people have to help to hang the film, and we need the light, we need the sunflowers, but little by little, the imagination builds a thing, and then it's done. So it was shown in a gallery recently. I don't know if one of you had seen it. No. Well, that's a point about the difference in cinema and art, because some of my films have come. You may have heard of The Gleaners and I, maybe The Beaches of Agnès, maybe some of you have seen some of my films. Have you seen Cleo from 5 to 7? Yes, some people. No, at least the cinema can exist. But if you miss an installation, a gallery, an exhibition, it's gone. It's a very different approach to a reception of the audience. So I'm interested because it's different, so I oblige myself to experiment something.
But it's fascinating because at the same time, you know, the installation, if you think about your piece in Paris now at the Cartier Foundation, it's there every day. So in a way, that's, you know, another time frame than a film which is only screened.
The Shack of the Cat is exceptional.
Yeah, yeah. But we should, because of course there's so many more cabans we could talk about. Some are realized, some are not realized. You wanted to do one as a boat of La Pointe Courte. No, that's unrealized.
Because each film gives me an idea that a shack could represent a part of the film and again use the real prints, you know. Because when I do, comment on dit les maquettes?
A model?
Models, you know, just to give you an idea, I use very small film. But the idea is to build them really at the real size, like we did with the one Happiness. So what I'm trying to say is that I want to experiment what I have not done yet, still in the idea of triptych. The one I brought is here. Maybe some of you have seen it already or not yet. Somebody has seen the triptych? Yes, because it's huge images, not connected. So the suggestion is that I show 3 images. One in the middle is a quiet beach with man passing by. On the left, it's a scene of a violent scene in a village where strange men try to attack a woman. This is a part of the film Vagabond. And on the right is something related to the fact that sometimes I film myself and sometimes I forget to stop the camera. So I've been filming my leg in the car, 1 minute. One day I filmed the floor of a cafe. And one day, when we had filming in the fields, we were coming back to the car and I was walking fast and I had not closed the camera. So the cap of the camera was dancing like this while I walk. And I kept these images because they were out of nowhere. So these 3 images are proposed to be seen together, sometimes in silence, sometimes with sound. My suggestion to the audience is that maybe you raise yourself the question, what is it about? Are these 3 images connected? Does it do something to you? Does it connect you to memory, to question, to, I don't want to be clear. Sometimes you have something that can be explained from A to B or C. And I think in art we should allow ourselves to be lost in the mind that maybe it's connected, maybe not. Maybe by proposing 3 different images, it, comment ça s'appelle, chatouiller, titled?
What's the word in English for chatouiller?
I want to do this.
Tickle? Tickle, yeah. Tickle, tickling?
Tickle your mind. That's what I'm saying. Because then maybe you don't know if you raise the question, but you have to be somewhere with no certitude, no certitude,
no certainty.
Voilà, no understanding, nothing logical, nothing explained, and this is moving, this is understanding, this is violent. It's like something. How do you capture these 3 different images at the same time? How do I capture them? What I feel about that? And sometimes the sound is there, sometimes it's the silence. It's not the same effect when the sound is there. So it's myself, I experiment something there, which is, can we propose something which is not clearly, which doesn't have a clear explanation, a clear meaning. Sometimes we should accept there is no meaning. There is just impression, just physical reaction of the eye, of the ear, of the situation of your own spirit when you come in. Maybe the day after you see it differently. So it's just, the world is so exact. We are in the world of numbers, of reality, of news. Everything is explained, And I think we have to work sometimes like the surrealists at the time of the surrealism, sometimes like people who are not totally clear. We should propose that the mind moves in different directions, and maybe it wakes up your own imagination. Maybe it reminds you something which has nothing to do with what I do. So it's proposing something vague, opposed to reality, which is nominated, comment on dit, which has name, numbers, and exact timing. So it's out of time, out of understanding. That's my proposition. No, I don't know how you will feel it. Maybe you saw it, Hans.
Yeah, I saw it, and I think it's extraordinary also that you decided here to combine it with Ulysse. And I was wondering what prompted that decision, because in a way there's the new commission, which was the invitation here, and then you decided to present the piece Ulysse, which is basically a short film from the 80s and a very old image from 1954. What prompted you to combine this new triptych with Ulysse?
Because the photograph called Ulysse is a photograph I did because by chance I saw a goat fallen from the cliff,
Fallen, yeah.
And I was very excited by that dead goat. I said, it's beautiful on the floor, like on the sky. So I put a little boy there sitting, and then a naked man who looks at the ocean. There is a photo here in the exhibition. And then that photo was a composition I had made that I thought was meaningful, dreamy. And the man looking at the sea, for me, is always Ulysses. For me, Ulysses has spent a lot of time telling he wanted to go home, and I doubt about that. Anyway, I think he didn't want to go home. But Ulysses is a main figure of the Odyssey. So I had that photo in a closet on the door, inside the closet on the door. Why 28 years later? I questioned that photo. I questioned it because suddenly I say, why is this image speaking to me, like asking me to do something? Especially because the child who was in the middle of the photo, Ulysse, had made a drawing when he was 8 or 7. He had drawn with colors the same subject, the man, the child, and the goat. So I decided to make an inquiry, to investigate about that image. And what is an image? Is related to memory or what and what? So I went to see the man that have filmed naked on the beach. I gave him an appointment and said, can you be naked because I should connect you the way you were? And he said yes, he was naked behind his table. Then I spoke with him. He didn't remember, not well. He remembered what he was wearing. He was very vague about his memory. Then I went to see the child who had become a man, a father. He had his wife and kids, and he didn't want to remember. So I questioned the mother of that child, Bienvenida, a Spanish woman, and she remembered well because she remembered that her son was sick and she was afraid that he would not be okay with his legs. And then I said, well, what was happening that day? I started to investigate really about the date when I had done that film, that photo. And it ended up that was a very important date in the history of France because that's the day they had lost a battle called Dien Bien Phu in Vietnam. And that started the decolonization time because that was the end of the French occupation of Vietnam. So very important date. And then there was other thing happening that day. There were a Vespa meeting in Paris. There was other things, There was a marathon of dance going on. So I started to think about what was happening while I was dreaming on the beach. And so I built an understanding of what is an image, if you ask, in the time, in the period, in the history, how was it made, when was it made? And little by little building information, and then going to a kind of daydream. Could that image mean something else? And so on and so on. So the film is really, what can I say? A commentary.
A commentary? No. A comment?
A comment, a daydream about an image, and also questioning, what does an image to us? Does it, by explaining it, do I make it more understandable, or everybody should not say anything about the image? And once, that film has been shown in many places, including in college and universities, because it's a study of one image, which means a story of what is an image, not that one especially. And one day I was with Jacques Demy and Mathieu in Hong Kong, and we crossed to Macau. No, we crossed to Kowloon on the other side, and we had to present a film. So Mathieu was presenting a film, and then a young man comes to me, a Chinese man. When I say young, I don't know, because they look old and young all the time. But a man came to me and said, I have to tell you something. The short film Ulysses changed my life. He's a Chinese, at the end of the world. I said, well, how could you say that? He said, and where did you see it? He said, à l'Alliance Française. They were screening short French films. And he saw the film, and he asked to see it again and again. And he said that he's understanding what images mean, what they can bring us, or question, change his vision of images and work. So I was so impressed to have that Chinese man in Kowloon so far, which made me feel that sometimes we work And it's not useless, because if 5 men in the world and 5 women have loved that film enough to think that it's interesting to think about images, it's good for me, you know. I'm not looking for money or fame, but I think it's important to know that we connect with people. And some people have been in real connection with some of my films. So short, one called L'Opéra Mouffe, or unknown film, or film less famous like Documentaire, which is called an emotion picture. But the famous film, I have famous film, Cléo from 5 to 7, you know, and Vagabond, and Jaco, like this. But among the things I've done, I love the idea that sometimes one scene in a film touches somebody enough to make it feel that cinema and photography and installation are there to connect people, sharing.
And that's beautiful, because also when you're looking at Ulysse, it struck me that there is a lot of connections to your early photography. Jean Villard pops up, who of course made you the official photographer of his visionary theatre, the Théâtre National Populaire. And when we were the other day in Paris, in Rue Daguerre, you explained to me that actually your history with exhibition started much earlier than these exhibitions you did since the early 2000s, that you did an exhibition of your photographs in your Courtyard in 1954. So I just want to ask you a little bit about these beginnings.
I thought I should show what I was doing, but it was for my neighbor. There was no invitation, nothing. I knew nobody. So I asked the neighbor and tell the cafe, come and see it. Some people were living by, came. There was no advertising, no. It was not even, I would say, it was not even mentioned anywhere. Just that I was saying, if I do photo, I should show them. So they were on the wall of the Courtyard. We didn't take them out at night. I kept them 2 weeks like this, day and night, and then off. So we have kept these images, and it's sensitive. For me, it's nice to say that I kept them together. There are 14 or something like this. That shown. Among them, there was that photo, the Ulysse. There was another one of a man in the sand. There was a portrait of Brassailles, of Prassinos, some artists, some neighbors. And it's interesting to think that the world is big, but we can just make discovery next door. I made a documentary of the people of my street, the shopkeepers. And it was like a world. So we can take a plane and go far, but we can do it at home. We can just investigate what is near us. So I think we should have a double way of looking at life, you know, very near and very far, like different glasses. No, I don't see well, I don't see far, I don't see near. Qu'est-ce que tu dis?
And it's beautiful, because I went back and forth, you know, between the two rooms, which I recommend you all to do. It's kind of wonderful to go several times from room to room. And so I was looking, you know, at this extraordinary, triptych of this extract of your 3 films, the new commission, and then I went back to Ulysse. And I was suddenly wondering, you know, how extraordinary that you came as a trained photographer all of a sudden to film, and without really any experience in film, you made this first film, La Pointe Courte, which I spoke about this film with Chris Marker, and one can speak to anyone, you know, of the Nouvelle Vague generation. Everybody credits this film as really being the beginning of everything. And so I just wanted to ask you to tell us, it came to my mind looking at Ulysse and at these photographs, you know, how did this transition happen? How did you all of a sudden come to Pointe Courte? What was the epiphany?
I don't know, because I don't know. Because, no, sometimes things in my life have been happening out of my organization decision, because I didn't go to school, to film school. I never was an assistant, and I hardly knew 10 film when I was 25. I meet students, I meet interns. They are 22 years old, and they have seen hundreds of films, and they know everything about Ozu, about Bresson, about everybody, and the outer space film, they know everything. And I knew nothing. I was interested in literature and painting. So I was going to exhibition, museum, reading a lot. I was not going to movies. So I wrote that film out of the blue. I wrote it, I was writing. I said, I could be a film like this. I'd taken pictures of fishermen and places I knew. So I put some photos and I wrote a screenplay. And I thought I would put it in a drawer, like a poetry that somebody would find 50 years later. Let's say 80 years later. No, 90 years later. And then a friend of mine, Carlos, he said, why don't we try to make it with a little money? And we were all together. Nobody was paid, not even the two actors, including Philippe Noiret. That was his first film. And I did the film with the energy of the invention. So it was shot, in silent and cheap because we had to. But we had traveling shots that I love so much, and we did images very strong, very black and white, with a lot of strong sun. And the film has been noticed as strange and maybe beautiful, but couldn't go out. It was not a normal film, It was too radical. So it opened 2 weeks in its life. But it was noticed by Cinémathèque, by movie writers, by André Bazin, people like this. So I became a filmmaker with no success, but I became a filmmaker.
And it's interesting also because before, also speak about Ulysse, and then in Paris we talked about literature. You told me that, in a way, the context for when you started to make movies in the 50s was a very classical one. Cinema was very classical. And you were very inspired by experimental literature. Joyce was, of course, an influence. Also, our friend Nathalie Sarraute, who was my neighbor when I moved to Paris first, was very important for you. She, of course, is a precursor to the Nouveau Roman. You are the precursor to the entire experiments of film. She is the precursor to the experiments in literature. So I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, because it seems interesting that this classical cinema needed to be kind of opened up, and that you found more inspiration from people like Sarraute or from Gaston Bachelard and, literature.
But it's not precise, I went to listen to the Bachelard lessons. I was not a student. I didn't pay, je sais pas comment dire, j'ai pas fait de devoir. I never gave him papers, and I never got to speak to him, but I was listening. I was very impressed because he was speaking about things that he was speaking about the house, the attic and the cave, and he was speaking about things that I loved. He spoke about Jonas in the whale. He spoke about strange things besides philosophy. So I was interested in the literature of the surrealists and the poetry of the surrealists and how they move people to change their way of logical explanation and all that. So, we are all made with thousands of, not thousands, but hundreds of different things we learn, we heard. And it's saying that we build our mind with all these things happening, reading, watching. I remember how I was impressed by Picasso. I mean, so impressed. I couldn't believe he was doing so well, and things like this. So I cannot say that I learned cinema, and I cannot say I learned about what is beautiful, what I would like to do, how could I dare to do myself. So I'm not a good example to say that. I would love to say that I had masters. I would love to say I have to pay my tribute to Bresson, but that I discovered much later. And filmmakers that I admire, I discovered them much later.
And you also talked about time, and when you asked me before what I felt, looking at the triptych here, the installation, once more makes us aware of subjective time, and that's something which starts really with your early films. I mean, Cleo has all to do with that. And you once said that...
but Cleo, you speak about Cleo, but I was discussing about time, real time. Cleo was shot in 90 minutes, and we would be with Cleo 90 minutes in real geography, real time. So I always gave myself some restraint, is that a word? Some difficult thing to be able to keep the structure, sometimes difficult, and then still keep the emotion of a character, keep a story that people will understand, would follow. So the structure should be more or less hidden, but gave me confidence in the project while I wanted to move the people, because people want emotion, they want surprises, they want all that.
Yeah, I never know in English if it's restraint or constraint. Is it constraint? Yeah, it's the Olympian thing, no? When Georges Perec talks about
Giving
that.
me difficulties.
Yeah.
And then surmonter, comment on dit?
Go beyond? Or?
Yeah, go beyond and keep the fact that I tell a story about somebody and the audience will react to the pain or the joy or the surprise of that character. And that was Cleo. And Cleo is, I don't know here, but is very well known. I don't know, have somebody seen Cleo from 5 to 7? Yeah. No, very.
Yeah. No, many have seen Cleo. Many
Okay.
hands go up.
Okay, thank you. I was afraid, because if you have not seen Cleo, I leave. Well, just to say that sometimes, you know, it's very precise. There is a piece here which is shown on a fabric, like a curtain, and it's called 5 Dreamers. Did you see the 5 young men?
Yeah, we all saw it, the big, big photograph. That's again Noirmoutier.
Yes, on the beach, yes. And because it starts with nothing, you know, and it starts with one of my grandsons had finished a baccalaureate, which end of the school. And he came with friends, and they start to move around, and, you know, eat and drink and swim. And I said, well, I need you as model. And I asked them to be on these pieces of wood.
It's like a stiglet.
It's these pieces, yes, but these pieces are there to cut the big waves. They have a reason. So I asked them to stand on it. And as you said, it reminds us some mystic used to do that. Ça s'appelle stylet.
I think it's stiglet, no? Yes. When the saints are on columns, the Buñuel movie also.
Yeah, yeah, he did one about Simon. Yeah,
Yeah.
And so these men were, for mystical reason, would stay like this, not eating, not drinking. Now the case, I took it the other side, because they enjoy very much doing it. They didn't feel it like it was difficult or a punishment or anything, but they look far away, and they accepted to. I told them about, in a landscape, naked people are called figure. In the oldest history of painting, you have naked people in landscapes. And they agreed, and they posed, and they were lovely looking far away. And for me, there are 5 dreamers. And that's what I brought here. Because the theme is, when Julia Fabry came and started to discuss the theme about my shows is the ocean and the seaside. But the theme of this story, beautiful world, where are you? For me, this 5 dreamer, you know, it's the beautiful world of youth, beauty, daydream, and ocean. This is for me the beautiful world.
That could not be a more wonderful conclusion. Anya, thank you so much.
Ça va?
And it's now the moment for your questions. You know, before Agnès was saying that it's not about answers, but it's about questions. When we look at the triptych, Molly Nesbitt once called this a rendezvous of question marks. So let's now have a rendezvous of question marks for all your questions to Agnès Varda.
Yeah, a very obvious question. Which filmmakers do you most admire?
Qui sont les cinéastes que tu aimes le plus?
Les cinéastes?
Oui, qui sont les cinéastes que tu aimes le plus?
I would say Buñuel, Bresson, Cassavetes, Godard, oui, Godard, absolument, Jacques Demy. Dis-moi qui j'aime.
What about Chris Marker? Chris Marker?
No, oui, Chris Marker. But you know, when they're so close friends, I don't even quote them. But
Keshish, Abdelatif.
oui, Keshish. Mais dans les films, dans les classiques, oh, il y en a beaucoup que j'aime. It's always a difficult question because at the minute you say, I love Cassavetes films, and then Gus Van Sant and Fassbinder, you know, many directors in the world have done.
It's interesting
film.
because you're also curating here a program of films, no? Because I think in the cinema here, as part of the Biennial, there will be some of your films, but then also some films you chose by other filmmakers. There's also Almodovar, I saw.
And about the Biennale, the discreet charm of the bourgeoisie is one of the themes I chose. I love it. It really is so interesting and disturbing. Oh, yeah, this is true. I chose some film. I should look which one I chose.
And you met Buñuel, no? Tu
Yes.
as rencontré Buñuel.
Oh, yes. And I was an incredible man, yes. I met some people, yes.
More questions for Agnès?
You're such an iconic woman filmmaker, and I was wondering whether there are other women filmmakers that you admire.
Tu es une cinéaste
whether that's
tellement
important
iconique,
to you.
cinéaste femme. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres cinéastes femmes qui sont importants pour toi?
Oh, I know some women directors that I really love and admire. I would name like Jane Campion. I would name in France Céline Sciamma. I would name aide-moi Julia.
Alice Guy-Blaché.
No, but Alice Guy Blaché, it's a joke, you know. She did a film in 1897, but it's interesting because she dared to make film. Oh,
La réalisatrice qui vient de disparaître l'année dernière.
qui ça?
J'arrive pas à trouver son nom. La réalisatrice française qui vient de disparaître. Chantal Akerman.
Yes, sure. Chantal Akerman. No, it's just that
Claire Denis?
when people ask questions like this, I'm always panicked, you know. I say, give me half an hour, I come back. I give you 5 names, but I'm sorry, I'm not fast in that. I think I'm trying to be attacked or somehow.
No, we have 2 great lists here. It's wonderful. It's curating.
I thought it was really interesting what you were saying about the differences between watching film in a cinema and as an installation. And because we're at a biennial now where people are trying to get round and see lots of things at once, I was wondering how you felt about kind of watching films all the way through in galleries, like long films. Is it valid to kind of pass through and see just a snapshot?
That's very strange because I've been in the world of cinema and then started the installation, you know, in the 1980, 85, and I was fascinated by the installation. And some artists started to film, and sometimes I felt, oh, they film very bad, they do whatever they do, they throw it in a screen like this, because I had been in the cinema, and then I started to understand that there is another way of filming, another way of proposing images, and the artists filming are very different proposition than the filmmaker shooting. So it's interesting because the video filming has been invading the installation. And now I think it's coming back to installation, but for a while some people are just showing films as artist filmmaker or as filmmakers artists. And sometimes I feel it's not well done because I thought they could maybe do a little better on their own project, because I'm ridiculous to say that. But I'm used to see films in which the filmmaker has taken his time to do this and that, while there is another way of expressing, which is the way some artists just throw images in and make them, what they feel important becomes important for the viewer. So I like better when there is an installation in space with object, proposition. You know, I don't go to a gallery to see cinema. I go in a gallery, in an exhibit, in a show, to see pieces that question my sense of the space and the proposition that are made, making sometimes mixing objects, sculpture, you know, frames, nets. I like when it's more than film, I must say.
How important are cats to your art and to artists?
Qu'est-ce qui est important?
C'est la question est sur l'importance des chats. Le chat pour ton travail et pour le travail des artistes en général.
I love cats. And there is a legend that said that poets love cats. But I've been always surrounded by cats. Right now I have 3. And one, the mother, lovely Nini, and her son, who is a big fellow. And then a third one called Straw, Pie. But I always had cats. Some have been important in my life. Some, I forgot them. But the house was always with cats. I never had a dog. And I've been really enjoying to have the cat around. Sometimes when I work, they come on the table. They put their pattes, comme on dit, sur le clavier.
On the piano, yeah.
The piano of the computer.
Oh. But that's so beautiful, the piano of the computer.
And then some comes near the bed, some are shy. I mean, what I love with cats is that I love them so much, but we don't know if they love us. Because they are very independent, they don't show their feelings, or if they show, it's not at the moment you expect it. And so everybody speak about dogs being so faithful, being very near, being their friends. No, the cats are independent. I don't know what they feel. And I like the idea that maybe I build something of my relation with the cats, but I don't know about what they feel. And sometimes they look like strangers, but they're there, and they're mad. When I come back from a trip, the first day they're mad at me. They don't speak. They want to say, you were away, don't expect me to be nice. First day, they're cold, always. That is okay. And then also what they do, when I pack a luggage, they put themselves in the luggage because they love boxes, they love drawers, they love little. So it's not that they want to come with me, it's that they want to say that they have their way of using the luggage. Anyway, it's a joke, but this is true. I love cats.
It's very beautiful, and it reminds me actually of my interview with the great photographer and filmmaker Helen Levitt, the late Helen Levitt. And we were in her studio in New York, and she had this big lamp, on her table. So the lamp, made the table the warmest place in the apartment. So the cat would always jump on the table and sit on the middle of. And she was reluctant to give an interview, but then agreed. So when I arrived in her kitchen or in her apartment, she basically sat at one end of the table and the cat in the middle and me. And whenever I would ask a question, she would look at the cat. So it became an interview.
But you say that sometimes. When I go interview in my patio, there is a green table, the typical green table in the garden. And Nini wants to steal the show. She comes on the table and faces the cameraman. And in some shot, she's on focus and I'm out of focus.
And I have a last question, if I may, because something extraordinary has happened in Paris. I came to see you last Sunday, and we spent a Sunday together. And I realized that it was also actually the moment of you relaunching a very, very important film from 1976, L'une chante, l'autre pas. One sings, the other doesn't, which is really, you call it a feminist musical. And it is so important because the launch of this film, the relaunch of this film, happened more or less at the same time as the arrival of the great Simone Weil in the Pantheon. And of course, Simone Weil was essential in the pro-abortion fight of the 70s. So were you. So I wanted to ask you to tell us about L'une chante, l'autre pas, and what it means for you that this film is now. And it's very important, of course, that this film also comes to the UK.
I've been part of the feminist movement from, I think I was feminist when I was born, So as much as I could, I've been part of collective manifestation, group, working things, the planning familial planning, Mouvement de Libération Féministe, MLF, a lot of groups of work about trying to move from the situation in which women had no right to have self-control, birth control, and no rights to get an abortion if necessary. And the fight was very strong. The struggle was very difficult and long. And when I made that film, I wanted to tell the 15 years of this struggle and things. And I did it with the story of two women who have been crossing that period differently. One, because she had two kids, she had the problem. She had to abort and she could not, and the man could not help her. And she had to little bit conquer herself to stand and become a woman, conscious woman, helping other women. And the second girl, played by Valérie Mérès, is a rebellious singing, red hair, very rebellious, and she sings with a group of women called Orchidée. And I wrote all the words of the songs the music was made by Vertemer and Orchidée. And my idea that you can tell strong sentences more easily when you sing them. Let's say like Engels says that in the family, the man is the bourgeois and the woman is the proletariat, the working class. Things like this. I would quote Engels, I would quote Beauvoir, I would quote them and make songs and speak about the double day of work, about all the things that have been so important for women, but making them sing and having that group crossing France with a truck and singing in the villages, in the places, because the film is also about the utopia that women thought, and everybody thought, that we could slightly change the world, change the mentality about men and women. And it takes ages, because this is it. The film is in 75, is it what it is? And you can understand.
76, I think, no?
Okay, good. 76, I shall. Merci. And what is true that we believe that not only that film, but all the work done by women, all the group, we ask the women to speak out. And we know that recently the big thing about Harvey Weinstein, asking the woman to say, I've been raped, I've been half raped. But this is something in the world of cinema. But the question exists in the whole world, in factories, in offices, in everywhere, there has been a problem. And that already we were working to help women to speak out, to say what they had to say. It has been very difficult. Women are shy, and they have been very shy for a long time. Now we have a lot of women working, and we find this here. I met many women working here, and in the BFI I saw 12 women responsible. So I'm not saying that women have not gained freedom and power, but this is in the world of cinema, in library, in cinematheque, but the real world of work, the real world of factories and institutions is still in problem. And that's why the struggle is on. It cannot be stopped like this. But that film was so full of joy because it was showing that when women work together for the purpose of helping others, it was very joyful. Not only the songs, but the spirit of the film is that you saw it. Is that by being in good mood, we fight better than just giving, des consignes, comme on dit.
Consigne.